Hi, this video from the Oklahoma Conservation Commission will talk about the basics of parliamentary procedure in meeting management, specifically the fundamental principles of parliamentary procedure and the steps for handling business in a meeting. My name is CJ Cavin. I'm a certified parliamentarian with the American Institute of Parliamentarians and a professional registered parliamentarian with the National Association of Parliamentarians. And I'm excited to share with you some quick tips about how you can have better, effective meetings. We're going to get started with some basic principles. There's 11 that I want to share with you. First, the first basic principle, the rights of an organization's total membership are paramount. Decisions of the assembly of an organization supersede those of any individual or small group of individuals. The power of any meeting is in the hands of the voting members. What this means is that those who show up and make decisions on behalf of the organization are going to guide that organization forward. Additionally, once a decision has been made in a meeting, that's the decision of the organization, and any individual disagreements need to be set aside, and the organization's decisions need to move forward. The second fundamental principle, the second basic principle, is all members have equal rights. Those rights include participating in the business meeting of their organization and the rights of making motions, speaking in debate, and of course, voting. Number 3, the third basic principle, is an established minimum number of voting members must be present in order for the business to be validly transacted. If the bylaws of your organization or statute or some superseding authority do not define this number, which is known as quorum, the general rule is that a majority of the entire membership must be present in order to validly transact business. Number 4, only one main proposition may be before the assembly at a time, and only one member may have the floor at a time. You can only talk about one thing, and only one person can be talking about it. Number 5, full debate before action on a main proposition is a right that can be suspended only by a 2/3 vote. All of these rules define a deliberative assembly. A key characteristic of an assembly being deliberative is the full right of debate and consideration. Number 6, a proposition or issue is the item under discussion, never the purpose who introduced it. Personal remarks are always out of order. When considering pending business before your organization, remember, the proposal is up for debate, not the person who proposed it. Number 7, this is a really long explanation for basically saying once a decision has been made, once a matter has been considered in this meeting, with very few exceptions, it cannot come up again. A question once settled may not be presented in that same form in the same session. This is to avoid wasting the time of the assembly and the members. The only ways to bring that question or similar question again in the same session are by moving to reconsider the vote on that motion, or by moving to rescind or to amend something previously adopted. And these motions require something more in the way of either previous notice or a higher vote than it initially took to pass it the first time. Number 8 of basic principles. A majority vote decides a question except in cases where basic rights of memberships or in a change in previous action are involved. Then a larger vote is often required. A majority vote is defined as more than half of the votes cast by persons entitled to vote, not counting blanks or abstentions, at a regular or properly called meeting at which a quorum is present. Basically, this is the rule of majority rules. The majority of those the majority vote is generally what carries the day, unless we're talking about taking away someone's basic membership rights. And then number 9, when we are talking about taking away somebody's basic membership rights, a 2/3 vote is necessary for any motion that deprives the member of his rights in any way. For example, changing the rules of debate, cutting off debate, closing nominations or the polls, or rescinding action without notice. Number 10. In the context of meetings, silence gives consent. Those who do not vote when the vote is taken allow the decision to be made by those who do vote. And a bonus principle, number 11, that I like to share is every member is entitled to an efficient meeting. Specific members cannot cause delay, cannot do certain parliamentary tactics that would deprive the rest of the deliberative assembly from having an efficient meeting. So we talk about business, moving on from the principles into actually how we conduct business in a meeting. We hear the term motion. I've referred to it a few times, and this may be a new concept for you. And so if it is, I just want to take a moment to explain. A motion is the means by which all business is introduced in an assembly. The term motion means a formal proposal that certain action be taken. Motions are classified according to their nature as a main motion, a subsidiary motion, a privileged motion, an incidental motion, and motions that bring back a question before the assembly. Motions of the first three classes, main, subsidiary, and privileged, have a fixed rank which determines when they are in order. So for example, if you have several motions that are pending at the same time, that rank will determine which one you deal with first. So there are 6 basic stages of handling business. It's motion, second, statement by the presiding officer, discussion, a vote, and then the announcement of that vote. And we'll walk through how each of those are handled. So that first step of making a motion, a member who is recognized by the presiding officer introduces a motion by saying, I move that the organization does this or that. If another member agrees with that motion or thinks that it's worthy of consideration or at least worthy of discussion, a second does not mean that you necessarily agree, just that you think it's something that needs to be discussed. A member can second the motion without rising. A member can say, I second the motion, I second it, simply second, or something such as support, something to give the presiding officer an indication that more than one member wants to discuss the potential pending question. The third and very important step is a statement by the presiding officer. The chair states the motion, it is moved and seconded that the organization does this or that, and opens it to debate by saying, are you ready for the question? Or, less formally, is there any debate? This is a very crucial step in the process because the entire assembly has a right to know what they're discussing. So the statement by the presiding officer is putting the entire assembly, the entire membership present, basically on notice as to what they're about to talk about. Number 4 is debating the question. After stating the motion, the chair looks towards the maker of the motion to see whether he or she wishes to debate first. This is his or her right to claim if he or she wishes. The maker of the motion always gets to go first if he or she chooses to. Then, if the maker of the motion chooses debate or add discussion or not, then the chair will open it up to other members of the assembly to add their input as well. Once full discussion has been had, when debate appears to have ended, the chair again says, are you ready for the question? If no one responds, the chair puts the question. And by puts the question, I mean takes the vote. By saying the question is on the adoption of the motion that the organization does this or that. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Once the vote has been taken, the chair announces the outcome of the vote. The ayes have it and the motion is adopted, or the noes have it and the motion is lost. The chair then should add a brief explanation of the resulting action or the steps which will be followed in order to carry out the decision just made. Action on the pending question is not complete until the chair has announced the result of the vote and gives the resulting action. For example, the ayes have it, the motion is adopted, and the organization will do this. There's a few frequently used motions that come up very often in meetings. Amend, commit, postpone to a certain time, previous question, recess, and adjourn. These are all very common motions. And I just want to take a brief minute to describe what each of them do. Amend is very basically you're changing something in the pending question, in the pending motion. So if the motion was that the organization does this or that, you could amend it to strike out that and insert something else. You can have a primary amendment and a secondary amendment, an amendment to the amendment, but you cannot have a tertiary or third degree amendment. The next one is commit, or often referred to as refer. You can commit or refer the pending question to a committee or to a task force or to another group of people to study and report back at an upcoming meeting. Postpone to a certain time. If the pending motion, the pending question needs more input, needs more research, a little bit more investigation needs to be done, or the assembly just is not ready to decide on it right now, you can postpone that to a certain time. For example, I move to postpone the pending question to the next regularly scheduled meeting. If adopted, it would take that pending question and move it to unfinished business at your next meeting or your next regularly scheduled meeting. Previous question, often referred to as call the question. It simply means, if previous question or call the question is adopted, it simply means to close debate and vote immediately. Oftentimes when previous question is called, it's just assumed that debate is automatically closed. Well, one of those basic principles that we talked about is that it takes a 2/3 vote to cut off somebody's membership rights. One of those rights is debate and discussion on any pending question. So a motion for previous question, or a motion to call the question, or a motion to close debate and vote immediately requires a 2/3 vote. So the chair would put the previous question to a vote. If a 2/3 vote is achieved in the affirmative, then discussion would end, and then the chair would immediately open up a vote on the question, on the pending question or motion. The next one is recess. If the assembly needs a very short break or time to readjust or use the restroom or do anything in a very short time, they can adopt a motion to recess. And this can also often be adopted by unanimous consent. If the presiding officer or chair of the committee or board or whatever, the assembly determines that more than likely no one's going to object, he or she can simply say, if there's no objection, we'll take a 10-minute recess. The last frequently used motion is the motion to adjourn. In fact, it's always used because you have to end the meeting at some point. And the motion to adjourn simply adjourns the meeting. There's a common motion that's often used in meetings that I haven't listed here, and it's the motion to table. This is often misused. In fact, in Robert's Rules of Order Newly Revised, there's an entire section on how this motion is misused in meetings. When this motion is used, most often it's to do one of two things. It's either being used to kill a motion, or it's being used to postpone a motion. But when the motion is being made, how do you know the difference? If the maker of the motion, the person wanting to table, is wanting to kill that motion, if they don't say that, then it should be placed on the table to be brought back up at a future meeting. Or if they're wanting to postpone the motion to a future meeting, and the person who's taking the minutes or the person who's preparing the next meeting's agenda doesn't know why the motion to table was adopted, they may not include it on the next agenda. Both of those have their own motions. If you want to kill a motion, it's the motion to postpone indefinitely. If you want to postpone a motion, it's the motion to postpone to a certain time or to postpone definitely. Again, this would be a motion to postpone the pending question to the next meeting or to the next regular meeting. So what is the motion to table if it's not one of these things? Well, according to Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised, the motion to table is only in order when there's an immediate pending, more urgent matter that has to come before the assembly or the board. For example, if there's a guest speaker on your agenda that's running a few minutes late, so the assembly decides to move forward with the business item, and then the guest speaker arrives, it is in order for a member to submit a motion to table the pending question until after the guest speaker has finished his or her remarks. Once the guest speaker has finished those remarks, then the motion to take from the table is in order. Otherwise, the motion to table is most of the time out of order, and either the motion to postpone indefinitely or the motion to postpone to a time certain is in order, and more likely the one of those motions is what's intended. And if a presiding officer or a chairman or president of a board hears a motion to table, it's completely appropriate for that presiding officer to ask, what's the immediately pending question or matter that needs to come before the assembly? Or simply ask to clarify, are you wanting to kill this motion, or are you truly wanting to postpone it? And then clarifying that the motion should either be the motion to postpone indefinitely or the motion to postpone to a certain time. On behalf of the Oklahoma Conservation Commission, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your time and for your commitment for watching this video on parliamentary procedure, basic principles, the stages for handling business in a meeting. If you have any questions about meeting procedures or parliamentary procedure, please don't hesitate to reach out to your representative at the Conservation Commission, and we will do our very best to get you an answer.